Good morning, everyone, and welcome again to Design Fusion NX webinar series. This is going to be session number 4. All right, so like I stated before, this does not replace the instructor-led fundamentals course. It is basically just kind of go over the basic steps on using NX. It's basically intended for managers, supervisors, new employees, prospects, or anybody that's interested in NX basics. All right, so today's April 23rd. It is session number 4, and then we're going to be introducing you to working with assemblies and navigate on the assembly navigator. All right. So like I said before, this usually is within less than an hour. It's same time. And then tomorrow's session will be at the same time. Each session will be a PowerPoint presentation embedded with demos and videos. This presentation will be recorded and we upload it to our social media channel. All right, so let's talk about working with assemblies. All right, so when you use assemblies application, you can do the following. Separate master geometry from downstream applications, measure static clearances, distances, and angles between parts in the assembly, design parts to fit and function on available space. So basically this is how the assembly navigator looks like. You got top level assembly right here at the top. Within that top level assembly, you can have other components, just as you see here, or sub-assemblies, or even take it another level, which is another sub-assembly, as you can see there as well. So let's go ahead and get started. How do we get loaded assemblies? Okay, so the first thing you need to do is, and this is going to vary depending on the how many parts do you have on your assembly, right? So sometimes it's ideal to load just just load the structure of the assembly. Now, can I walk you through those steps here? All right, so first thing you do is you go open up, click on the open command there. And then you will need to go and go to the options. And on the options, you got a couple options in there. You see that right here, you got the load from folder, and this is where you would load. See that? It's load structure only. And you can have partially loaded. And then once you do that, once you click OK, you get the assembly structure only. You notice everything's kind of grayed out. And then only that, when you do this method, if you look at the asterisk right here, everything's packed. And you can see the first one right there. And there's ×5, which means that there's actually 5 instances of that part in there. And you can see that at the bottom here, by default, if a component has more than one occurrence in the assembly, it is packed in the assembly navigator. The component is displayed as a single node where the component name is followed by the number of times the component appears in the immediate parent. So you can see that, right? So once you've done that, let's say that, all right, I want to work on this part here. Okay, so at that point, you can unpack that load and you simply right click on that and say unpack. And then when you do that, you can see that now it's got the, the 5 instances of that particular part. And obviously you can always go back to unpack that node there. And then again, save you a lot of memory resources, things like that. So let me just kind of show you that real quick on my, on the NX. All right, so again, I'm gonna go ahead and click on the open. And I'm gonna go find that particular part here, right? So I'm gonna go here, and it's a, let me remember the name here. It's the laser test assembly. Let's see here, laser test assembly. There you go, right there. And then before I do that, I'm gonna go to the options here. And this is where I was talking about right here. Yes, I want to load it from folder. Load, it stays right here, all components. And I'm gonna have simply select structure only. And I'm gonna have that partially loaded. And then once I click OK, and OK here, it's gonna load in my assembly here. Just first, give me a second here. There you go. All right. So if I expand that on my assembly navigator, notice that you could see them right here, right? And you could, if I hover over them, you could kind of give a little generic where approximately where it's located on the graphics area there. See that? Okay, well, and then if I want to, let's say I unpack that, I could right click here and there they are. But however, though, you see that there's 5 instances of that. They're still not quite, visually there because it's still partially loaded. Now, let's say if I decide that's what I want to work on, and at that point, I can simply click here and it brings them back. And again, that's kind of a way of indicating if you have a large assembly, this is a good way of indicating that without using as much resources as possible, right? So if you want to load up the large assembly and only focus on certain areas, and at that point, you could either go ahead and activate that by clicking on the nodes, and then at that point, you can start working on them. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Close that. All right. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go back up to also on the file. You also can do that right here. See where it says assembly loads options here. Now I'm going to change that here because the next one I'm going to do that, it's going to try to do the same thing. So I don't want that behavior moving forward. So I'm going to have that all components fully loaded and say, okay. All right. Okay. So, so let's say you have all your parts already on your assembly and you want to work in a particular part. So I want to make that part a work part. So in other words, I want to modify that part already. So at that point, I want to expose the part navigator and the features on that. So if you double click, there's 2 ways you could do that, right? You can double click on the component and it'll make that part work part, okay? Or you could do a right click, and then once you get that, you're gonna get this mini menu here, and then you could simply select, yes, I want to make that a work part. Okay, so let me go ahead and open up this part here. Kind of show you that. Okay, so if I look up in my assembly navigator, you see there's my components here. And then if I go to the part navigator, there's really nothing here. See that? So if I go back to the assembly navigator and simply just double click on my part. Oh, there we go, double click. And you notice my other parts became kind of ghosted out. That's because now it's indicating to me visually that my part is now a working part. See that right here? Not only that, I go visually see that on the assembly. Now, if I go back to the part navigator, you can see that I now be able to see the features for that particular part. Now, if I ever want to go back to the assembly, I simply right click anywhere in the graphics area here and say work on display assembly. So you click here, there that. Okay, the other way it was simply click on that and you see that right here again. Simply go over and say make that a work part. And if I do that, you can see that on the part navigator is active. If I go back, look what happens to my part navigator. If I go back to my assembly, kind of goes away, right? Because now I'm actively in my assembly now. All right, so that's kind of how you work back and forth on the whether you want to work on the part in the context of the assembly and modify the part in the context of the assembly, and then you go back to the assembly. All right, that's kind of the workflow there. Okay. All right. So once you've done that, there's a couple things you could do here, right? There's a designing a part in the context of the assembly. At that point, you could go ahead and use geometry from the other components to create a new part. That's really a nice way to it. And we call it a top-down modeling approach. All right, so again, you have to click on the create new, and then you get a couple options here. What do you want to call the model or your new part? And then use the tools to either create a new part or use geometry from the assembly to create a new part. All right, so the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and show you how to go about creating a part in the context of the assembly. And this part, it's not going to be associative. Okay. Let's see here. All right. So let me go ahead and switch over to Solid Edge and open up my assembly here. All right. So we have an assembly here. And then you can see there's not too many components in here, but I got a couple of them in there. And I want to say, I want to design a new part on this surface right here. So as you can see, I'm in the assembly here. I need to go and actually create a part. So if I go to the assembly tab here and actually click on the component here, on the command, create new. And once you click on that, you decide, okay, what do you want to call that? I want to call that, new part. Oh, not art, sorry. 7, 8, 9, something like that. All right. And at this point, you could say whether you want that to be either inches or millimeters. I'll go ahead and leave that. And then you say, okay. Okay. In here, now it's basically just confirming that this is what you want. Yes, that's the name of the part. I want it to be an absolute. I want it to be a component origin absolute. Yes. And at that point, you simply say, okay, fine. Now look what happens. As soon as I click OK, it's going to add this part right here that is highlighted and now in my assembly navigator. So I click OK, and you can see that it added it to that my assembly navigator. Now what I need to do here is I need to make this part a work part. So I simply right click and then make that a work part. So now I'm actively in that part. You see that my assemblies kind of ghosted out because now I'm using that as a reference. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to simply go now to home here and then select the extrude command. And I want to, yes, accept all of that. And then I'm going to do is I'm going to select a reference plane here. And what that's going to do is going to take me to a sketcher. And oh, let's see here. Let me cancel that out of here. Yeah, I am active on that part, yes. And there we go. Just selecting the right one there. And as soon as I do that, just simply come back out of there because again, I want to use the geometry from the part here. So let's see here. Supposed to be, oh yes, yes. Make sure, this is what's important here, guys. I almost missed that. And I have it right here pointed out in front of me. That you need to make sure that you're on the entire assembly and make sure that the face edges are selected. That's why I was not selecting that. So I was waiting for that to be selected, and it wasn't doing that. I was like, okay, yeah, that's what I needed to do. Okay, so once I do that, I select that, and I'm simply going to go that direction, and then say, okay. So yes, just to recap that again a little bit, I don't want to make that confusion there. The reason why I'm selecting that is because this entire assembly was not selected. It was not, it was something else. I can't remember what it was, but that was not active there. And make sure that this face edges is selected as well. All right, so now once I've done that, you can see that now I'm able to select that. And that's exactly what I wanted to do. I want to make sure that I select that surface. Because you could do that. You could go back into and actually sketch something else in there, but I didn't want to do that. I want to just kind of show you how I could use geometry surfaces from my part assembly and then extract that and create my new part from. Once I've done that, there it is right there. I've created that new part from the context of my assembly. And if I want to go back, I could go back into my assembly, and now you can see that there's my new part right there. Now, I'm going to go ahead and delete this part here, right? So basically, this is what I've done here, right? Created that part, accepted that's the value, and on my assembly navigator, I went in there and make that a work part, click on the extrude, select my plane, and basically come in out of the sketcher. And once I've done that, and this is what I was talking about right here, make sure that these are active, entire assembly and face edges. That's why I was not able to select that. All right, and then once I've done that, you select the surface and you extrude your part. Now, I want to point out this part is not associated with assembly, okay? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and show that the next one where it's going to be associative, okay? So the difference here is I'm basically going to do the same steps, create part, and then the difference there is that I'm going to use a wave geometry linker, right? So create my part, make the part active, select the wave geometry linker, and then select that, make sure you select that. And then once you do that, basically do the same thing here. So once you have that, and at that point on the part navigator, you're going to see that there's a link here between the face, and that kind of gives you an idea that this part that you just created is associative to a part in the assembly. All right, so let me just kind of show you that in the next here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this part again, or just go ahead and delete that. Say yes, and basically go through the same process over again. Right, so I'm going to go back to my assembly tab here, and then I'm going to go ahead and create a new part. Right, and I'm going to call this new part, and that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever the part may be. Okay, once I've done that, I'm going to say okay. And that's exactly what I'm looking for. Yes. Okay. Now again, I'm going to go make this work part. Now the difference here is that instead of going back to the home tab and extruding that, I'm going to go up here and say make this a wave geometry linker. And then make sure that you have the associative selective. That way, you know that that's going to make that associative, associative with the part. All right, so I accept that. Right. Off here. All right, and then once I've done that, then I go back to my home tab here and extrude command. And this time I'm simply going to select the surface, and you can see that I've highlighted over it. It says right there, face linked face. So that's exactly what I'm looking for. You could use the quick pick there. You see that, and there's selected right there. And then once I've done that, then I get the same thing, right? I could, extrude it whatever direction, and at that point I could say yes, okay. All right, and again, that part is still active here. So if I want to go back to my assembly, I just simply right click, work display assembly, and there it is. So now if I go back to, oh, I'm sorry, go back here, assembly, make this a work part, right? And then if I go to the part navigator, you can see that it's indicating to you that that face is linked. So if this bottom part changes, guess what? This is going to change as well, as long as it's within this limits of that being surface being still there. Okay. Let's go back to my PowerPoint here. All right. The next one is going to be the bottom-up modeling approach. So basically, you use the add component, and at that point, if you already have components that you already created or somebody else created, and then you want to bring them into the assembly, we're going to go ahead and use the add component. All right. So typically, once you've created, you bring your parts. Well, there's a couple of things you need to do, right? You just don't bring them into the assembly. You need to apply a constraint there, right? So typically we'll go and constrain the parts so that way there's aligned with each other. There's a relation between one and another. If there's some kind of form function that needs to be done, then that you do that at this level. The touch align constraint is the most commonly used, and you'll see me go through that whole process here. Okay. So let me just kind of go through this very quick here. I think I already had another part. Let me close this part here. No. No. Okay. All right, so let me go ahead and open this assembly here. Okay, so as you can see, there's nothing on my assembly navigator. I have the top level assembly, but I need to add components to that. So in order to do that, excuse me, I need to go and find the components. So I'm going to go to this assembly here and add components. So I'll click on the command. Now I'm going to get the dialog box here and say, okay, well, I need to go and find them, right? So if they're not loaded in here yet, that means I have to go and find them. So I'm going to go ahead and open up. And then I'm going to go find, I'm going to look for the caster shaft. And that's DES03. Let's see here. I believe it's this guy right here. Yep, that's it. Okay, so once I've done that, I selected it. And I'm simply click OK. And it puts it right in here, right? So a couple things happen here. So right away, it placed it in the constraint right here. So you see how, and I also have another option here. I would typically select the absolute and displace part is one of my options there. And if you want to move that, you have the ability to do that. Now, look what happens here. Based on the center of gravity of this part, it actually puts it up right where it's at on the 0, 0. You could overwrite that by simply saying, you know what, actually, I want this one to be right on 0, 0 on X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to make that 0 as well. And it just places it right in there. Okay. And that's just by default. That's what NX does. And at that point, you could say, yes, that's where I want it. And this is obviously my first part. So when I click apply, it's telling me you just added the first component to the assembly. Do you want to create a fixed constraint, which is absolutely what I want to do. You know, that's the first thing. Everything's going to be working off that part. You know, it's going to everything be connected to that part. So yes, I would definitely want to make that as my fixed. So I'm going to go ahead and accept that. And you can see that it gave me a little indicator there. I don't know if you can make it out right there, but you can see the little grounded almost effect there, but that's your fixed. So it's telling me that that is fixed now. All right. So once I've done that, I would go ahead and just simply start going and looking for my other components. And I already clicked apply. It gave me that fixed arrangement. But now I have to go find the next one. The next one is going to be, so simply come up here again, go to open, and that's going to be the caster spacer. And let me go find that. There it is right there. Okay. So once I find that, click OK. Now, what I like to do here is when you first come in here, and obviously I already have the default settings that I had. So absolute display part. I have it so it's moved. So I could click here and actually, you know what? I want to place it so that I could visually see that and just drag it out here. You're gonna see me do this a lot when I start placing other components, because sometimes they kind of overlap on this other part and I want to kind of move them out so I could later makes it easier for me to place and add my constraints to that. Okay, so the first constraint I'm going to place here is, now once I've done that, let's say this is where I decide I want to move it. I could grab that center and move it anywhere. Then next, I switch over to constraint. And then at this point, you have the ability to go and select what type of constraint do I want. Well, for this one, I'm going to go ahead and select the concentric, right? So when I select the concentric, all I need to do is simply select the edge here and then the edge on my fixed part, and it places it right in there. And then obviously I want to come back and apply. All right. And then the next one is I'm going to go ahead and bring in the caster fork. So I'm going to go ahead and go find that again. And I'm going to, there it is right there. And I go ahead and bring it in again. Now, notice what it did here. This is what I was talking about earlier. It kind of placed in a position where maybe that's not where I want it. And it's just not going to make it easier for me to, find out where I need to place the constraints to. So at that point, I go back to move, right? Just move it out a little bit here. And at that point, I will use some of the tools here to kind of adjust it where I want it. So it makes it easier for me to place it and add that constraint. And at that point, I'm going to go right here. Okay. And then once I've decided that's the, what do you call it? That's the position that I want. Then I'm going to go ahead and use the touch align. Okay. So by doing that, I'm going to go to constraint here. And you can see that there's my touch align there. And for this time, I'm going to go ahead and just simply, yes, I'm going to go ahead and on this one, prefer touch for the orientation, because I really just want to go from this surface right here to that surface there. Okay. Then I'm still going to stay within the touch align, but I'm going to switch over at the and select that inferred axis, center axis. And at this point, I'm going to simply go in here and make sure I select that. See that? If you highlight that, that's not going to work. You need to make sure you select the actual axis right there. And you can see it's highlighting. It's giving me that visual right there. And then come back up here and do the same thing. Make sure it highlights that. You see it kind of turns a little reddish there, brownish color there. And then accept the center line. And there you go. Okay. Then the next one I'm going to do is I'm going to actually, I'm going to bring in two components. Okay. So, because I want to maybe put them constraints to that and then put them all into that. So let me see. I'm going to go ahead and go find those. And that first one is going to be the caster axle bushing. And go here. I believe that's there right there. 03, caster 3, axle. Yes. I'm just confirming over here. Make sure I get the right part here. The naming. And that's it right there. Okay. All right. Oh, yeah. Make sure what happened here, I did not hit apply here. Make sure you hit apply because it was still in the context of trying to apply that the other relationship here. So yeah, that's a good indication that, yeah, you need to come back and make sure you apply that. All right. So let's see. I'm going to go back again, find that part. And the bushing, which is the caster 3. Axle bushing. Yep, right there. So I'm going to bring that in. And right now, I'm going to move this over. Like I said, it kind of just by default just puts them right in there. And I'm going to place it right about here. All right. And then I go ahead and click apply. And then I'm going to go back again. I'm going to go find the other part. And this other one's will be the caster wheel. This guy right here. Okay. And again, I'm still at move. So yes, I could come back and say, you know what? Move this guy, move the wheel a little bit over here. Okay. So now that I've got both of them in here, and you can see why I kind of did it this way. So that way it's easier for me to kind of put the constraints here and then move on with the, all right. So I'm going to do the first one is going to be the, again, I'm going to use the touch align. So I'll go back to constraint here, touch align. And this time I'm going to go ahead and use the inferred. Yes, I got that here. So I'm going to go ahead and select that part right here. And I make sure I use the center line there. And right there. Okay. All right. So once I've done that, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select the center. So this right here is going to allow me to place this part right here center to the other one right here. So I kind of maybe move a little bit here, and then make sure you select by subtype 2 to 2. So what I mean by that is that I want to select this surface, that surface here, with this one, and that one. And you see how I put it in there? Okay. And basically, I'll do the same thing again with the, now this one right here. I'm going to say, make sure I hit apply. And I'm going to go back and select this part right here. Right. And I'm still going to make sure I use the center. And I'm going to use 2 by 2 and select, let me move this a little bit here so you can kind of see that up here. There you go. I need to come back and select the subtype here because I'm going to go back and select that here. Zoom a little closer there. And basically do the same thing over here. There and there. Now, I'm still going to go back and now going to go to the touch align, right? And then I'm going to select invert center axis. All right, so I'm going to go back here and make sure I get that here. And there. Yep, exactly. See that? And if I go from this view, everything's centered to that. Okay. There's still more parts left. Let's see here. So I'll make sure I hit apply. And this is going to be the axle, caster axle here. Go back up here. And let's see here. 03, caster 3. There you go, right there. All right, so once I've done that, I go ahead and accept this. And again, it puts it right up there. And I make sure that I want to move that and place it right about here. And okay, so the next thing, obviously, I need to go back and make sure I get the proper constraints, right? So for this time, I'm still gonna use remember I said earlier that the touch line is the mostly used here. So I'm gonna definitely use that. I'm gonna do touch line here. And I'm gonna go still invert center axis there. So I wanna select this here and select this right here. And then once I've done that, I'm going to switch over to the preferred touch and select that surface right here. And exactly what I'm looking for, and then apply. Okay. The next one is I'm going to add these two components, the caster clips there. So that way I could just do them all. You see, basically I did this earlier, right? Went in here and just grab the parts there and then push them into the assembly here. And we go find them. I know that one is one. And again, make sure you bring them over here. Oh, it looks like I already had a part here. I didn't bring it over. Must have brought out two of those parts. Okay. Sometimes you have to be careful when the account is right here. You actually bring it two. I think I might have done that with that one up there. Okay. That's fine. I could just go ahead and delete that. Let's go ahead and say apply. And then I'm gonna go ahead and bring the other part. Let's see here. Is this guy right here? And say open. And again, it's just make sure you go here. And if you don't see it, just make sure you select the specific orientation. Click on the manipulator and just drag them out here. There you go. Okay. All right, now once I'm done with that, well, I need to determine which one goes to what. Well, I think the big one goes right here, and then the smaller one goes over here. So once I determine that, now I'm gonna go to the constraint. And for both of these, I'm gonna simply select concentric. And I'm gonna simply select the edge here. And select the edge here. There. If you get the wrong side here, simply click flip here. See how it does that? Really quick way of doing that. And then I'm gonna go ahead and continue on with the other one right here. Which is gonna be here. And let's see here. All right. And this is what one of the things if you remember the first day the session here, Monday, I talked about the space bar and how much easier it is to kind of rotate things around and you zoom in. That's why it's a huge tool to help out in CAD. All right, so once I determine that's what all my parts are in there, I could simply say apply. And if you want, if you wish to bring more parts, but at this point we're pretty much done. Brought all the parts here good except this guy right here. I kind of added another next one in there. That's fine. I could simply delete that. All right, there we go. Okay, so with that said, I think, let me see here. Let me go to my PowerPoint here. What I've done here, basically went through all the steps in here. So these are basically the steps I took. And like I said before, I use the touch line. That's the most that you always will be using, the most common one. And obviously, yeah, there's certain areas where, yeah, you need to specify, like say, for example, concentric or center. That's where you have the option to do 2 clicks on both sides of the parts, and that's going to center about that. So if the center or any of the parts move, that or the other one of the parts move, the outer part moves, and the part that you use to center it about is going to stay still the center of that, which is really neat to do. A nice way of always maintaining that. And again, I just went through these steps right here. and finalize here. Okay, so at this point, you know, I could go back to my assembly here, and you could see that there's my assembly navigator, but there's a little tab here in my resource bar here. It's called a constraint navigator, and you can see how pretty much everything is constrained. You see the components there. You can see that. You can actually filter that by, say, by inherit or status. See that? So you could see if you have any warnings, there's 0 there. It's kind of a nice way to check if you have any failed or constricting relationships or conflicting relationships. And you can see that. I could come back and change that around by component status. Let's see here, by level. So yeah, this is a nice way to kind of going back and see if anything has failed on you. All right, let's see here. Okay, and you could expand them, and then you can see actually the components in there. They're being highlighted over there on the other end. All righty. All right, so that pretty much does it for the assembly, introduction to assembly. Again, a reminder, if you have any questions, feel free to call us at send us an email to support@designfusion.com. Tomorrow is going to be the draft. If you want to get the full schedule of the meetings, go to our website. You want to check out our posts, anything that we posted in the past couple of days, you could go to Design Fusion YouTube channel and then check out our videos there. All right. All right. So if you want to go also check out NX trial for free. Oh, my bad. I got out of there. Okay. Let me play that little clip here. Right. And just go to, again, Google, type in NX software. That takes you to the Siemens website. In there, you go to the trial, right, free trial. Click there, and like I stated before, the great thing about this is that you don't have to download any software. It's just everything's on the cloud. So there's no, you know, specs on the computer, special specs or anything that you need to. As long as you have a browser, just go out there, download the package you want, and just go ahead and use it anywhere, wherever you are at. As long as you have internet connection, pretty much access it anywhere. All right, with that said, thank you guys for joining us. You have a great day.